Hey guys, it's Dr. Vicky here. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. I'm back with another video, and this time I'm really going to make it snappy because my pup is waiting to go to doggy daycare. So I've got a limited amount of time before she starts to kick off because she knows she's about to go and she loves doggy daycare. So today I want to talk about the roles that we play in our relationships. Now, this is a little bit of a spin off of the popular book by Eric Byrne, who was a Canadian psychiatrist, I believe, he wrote a book called The Games That We Play. And if you're interested in unhelpful relational dynamics, check that book out. It's an oldie, but a goodie. Really, really interesting insight into the unhelpful dynamics that can occur in our relationships and the different positions that we may take at any given time based on the game that we're playing at that time. But I want to talk about the roles that we play, and specifically the roles that we play across the board in our relationships. So in our families, with our friendship groups, with our partners, even with our colleagues. We may find from time to time that we have been given a role or we act into a role, and we kind of see this behavior repeating across different social groups. And I mean, sometimes that can be a good thing, but sometimes it can be quite unhelpful if we then become quite rigid and fixed in that role. And sometimes the role actually isn't serving us well. So I want to talk about that and give you some tips and help you think about how you can start to position out of living and moving in a particular role. Typically, when I do an assessment with clients, I ask them to tell me about their family background, their history, where they've grown up, who's in their family, that sort of thing. And that can yield a lot of rich data. But sometimes I also like to go in with a secondary question, which is, can you describe each one of your family members in 2 or 3 words? Now, I do this because it actually gives a great insight into how they view the people within their family, but also how they position themselves within that, and the unique relationships they have with each family member. And sometimes I may also ask them to describe, okay, what about you? Like, how would your family describe you, or how would you see yourself? How do you fit into this relational dynamic? And it can give a lot of information about the roles that each person is playing within that family unit, but more importantly the role that they are taking on, and whether this is something that has been unconsciously placed on them, whether this is something that they kind of act into. And sometimes people aren't necessarily aware that they may take this position. Sometimes they really are. And that's like a good starting point to figure out, okay, this is how this person positions themselves within their relationships. Let's assess that, and let's assess whether that is doing them any good, whether that's doing them any harm. Is there any flexibility? Is there any room for movement within this particular role? Now, I'm going to give you some examples of some typical roles or archetypes that people may play. So one may be the strong one. So this is the person who is dependable, resilient, loyal, takes on everyone's burdens, is the one that people run to when life gets really tough. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself to be resilient, but what happens when you are the one who needs help actually? Are you able to ask for help? Who do you turn to basically when things are kind of not going so well for you? Are you able to be vulnerable and ask for help? So that's one type. Another type may be the baby of the family. So this is someone who has less responsibility, who is coddled, maybe people are overprotective around them. They aren't necessarily given much responsibility. Also maybe not much freedom also. And I mean, it's great that we have people around us who want to protect us and who dote on us and who really care and love us, right? But what happens then when the baby of the family decides that they want to have their own voice and own their own voice, and they want to move their life in a different direction? Do they have autonomy? Do they have a sense of empowerment that they can, be courageous and move their life in a particular direction? Another archetype or role may be the joker of the family. So this is someone who is very positive, really upbeat, always keeps things lighthearted, sets the tone, makes everyone feel really good, the go-to person if you want to have fun, if you want to relax and have some downtime. And again, nothing wrong with that per se, but then what happens when what happens to that person's emotional needs, or when they need support, or when again things aren't going so well for them? Will they be taken seriously? Is there room for that person's issues, or are they actually always supposed to be seen as the positive one, the one that everything is a-okay? Now, we may find that we enter into these roles because of how other people engage in relationships with us, and it can be really hard to move out of that role because one, we may find that it's just easier to go with the flow, to go with the tide. We may also worry about upsetting the apple cart and challenging how other people not only view us but how they view themselves, right? Because if you are in relationship with someone who is typically the strong one, you can become the person who is the dependent, right? And you can be the person who is always offloading your burdens onto other people. But then what happens when that person doesn't always operate in that role? You'll then need to step up and think about, okay, how else can I get my needs met? I mean, how else can I be of support to another person? And sometimes that can be quite jarring, right? If we are used to behaving in a particular role. So what can we do if we find ourselves in these positions and we feel that we're quite stuck? I'm going to talk you through. Remy, come here. See, you know what you're supposed to do. You know what you're supposed to do. Okay, just 2 more minutes, baby. 2 more minutes, okay? 2 more minutes, I promise. Okay, so there are 3 things that we can do. The first thing we can do is to establish our boundaries and be really clear with the people around us about our needs, about our wants, and not shy away from being really vocal about it. And the thing is, if you start to establish some boundaries in a really gentle way, which is, you know what, I realise that when you do X, Y, and Z, it makes me feel A, B, and C. Is it okay if we do things a little bit differently? Or, for example, let's use the archetype of the strong one. You know, when I feel in these situations when you offload onto me all the time, sometimes I feel like there's not enough room sometimes for what I'm going through. Is it okay that, you know, we kind of establish some boundaries here, where if maybe I'm not in the most healthiest of spaces, I can let you know, and maybe that's a time when you don't necessarily put things onto me because I'm really struggling to kind of hold myself up. That's what it means to have boundaries. It doesn't mean that you enforce a really strict boundary in a rude way, in an abrupt way, but you negotiate. Well, not necessarily negotiate, but it's a conversation, right? And you're inviting the other person to take part in that. You're not negotiating your terms of your boundaries, but maybe you're listening to what the other person has to say, and the other person is asking you how best they can help you, or how best you can help them to respect your boundaries. So the first thing, be really clear on what your boundaries are. Be really clear on what you need from time to time from your relationships, and be really clear on what you want. Okay, the second thing is to become really clear on your identity. Who are you? We are multifaceted beings. We have loads of dimensions, we have different layers. You are not just one thing. You do not just fit into one tidy box, although life would like us to think that, the people around us would like us to believe that, but there are other parts of your identity, right? My pup is coming up. Do you want to come up and say hi? Come on then. Come up and say hi. Oh, as if she even knows who she's saying hi to. Hi. Hello, baby. Okay. Yeah, becoming clearer on who you are, your identity, will mean that you become more comfortable with challenging the status quo. You become more comfortable with showing different sides of your personality, different traits, because you realize that there is more to you than what other people wish to see. And one way you can do this, I think I've spoken about it in another video, is to highlight, okay, what are the characteristics that I possess that I really, really like about myself? How can I begin to amplify those things? What are those some of those things that maybe I don't necessarily value or really like, or I wish to improve? you're really conscious about that, and you're conscious about acting differently and doing something different. But it's really important that we get a clearer sense of our identity. This is something that takes a while. You don't just arrive at it just like that. We're constantly redefining ourselves as we progress through life, but we can become a little bit more clear and crystallized in our understanding of our core identity. So becoming more clear about who you are, what you stand for, what you value, your traits, your personality characteristics, so that when someone tries to pigeonhole you into a particular box, you can make adjustments and you can rectify and let them know different. And the third and final thing is we can become more conscious of the environments and the relationships that we engage in. If we find ourselves in lots of relationships that refuse to allow us to evolve, they refuse to allow us to have an opinion, they refuse to allow us to grow and to have some say in how we choose to be related to, then you need to rethink that relationship. Sometimes it's not as easy with family because, you know, family is complicated, and sometimes it's not as easy as just walking away from your family, and we still may want to have our family around us, but we can become more conscious of the time, the effort, what parts of us we allow to show up in particular relationships that do not allow room for maneuver, do not allow room for us evolving, and intentionally seek out those relationships that allow you to thrive, that allow you to grow, flourish, become the best version of you possible. And, you know, relationships that can see where you're making changes, and they nurture that, they encourage you, they spur you on. Those are the types of relationships that we need to be intentional about seeking out, and minimizing maybe the relationships that coddle us, that keep us restricted and become threatened when we actually move in a different way. Again, sorry for the crunching if you can hear it, if you can hear Remy crunching on her stick. So guys, those are the three things that we can do if we find ourselves playing out particular roles within our family, our friendships, in our social circles, and those roles aren't necessarily working for us 100% of the time. Those are the different things that you can do to try and move out of those roles. Hope you found that helpful. Thank you for being tolerant with Remy, Remy Bear. So yeah, I'm going to end this video here. Love to know what you think, as always. And until the next video, take care. Bye.